after talking to Professor Ashutosh. Of the researches. Sometimes we classify them based on purpose or on the method which we use for taking up the research. And the third criteria you may consider as the nature of the data and the paradigm. So when we classify the researches based on purpose, we say that the research may be an fundamental research or applied research or action research. When we classify them based on research method, then you must be knowing the names, like experimental research, historical research, philosophical research, correlational research, like this. But when we say based on nature of data and the paradigm, the two things become very important. One is whether we are collecting the qualitative data or the quantitative data, but the basic thing which underlines the type of research as quantitative research and qualitative research is the paradigm. So my session is not on paradigm, but I'm just picking it up from there so that you may understand the rationale for using different types of sampling methods. So when we classify the research, taking up the third one, based on the paradigm, we talk about the positivism and the post-positivism. There are many assumptions, which the two paradigms make. I have just, I'm just highlighting only the major ones, which are very much related to the type of sampling which we use. One is that the positivists say that the word is knowable. That means that they believe, and they believe in this, that the world around us can be known by the human beings. So whatever is there becomes observable. They say it's predictable, that is, there are certain laws, certain theories, certain principles which govern this entire world. And there is one truth which prevails, that is, it is universal. And when we say single truth, means whatever we find, whatever we will have in research, that will be generalizable to the entire thing. That is, there is only one single truth which prevails. So accordingly, we have the quantitative researches in vogue, because in quantitative researches also we say that whatever the variable which we have, they become observable, they are measurable, and even what to the extent, they also converted the construct of intelligence into the variable, and intelligence tests were developed through which we can measure the intelligence, right? So even the quantification was done for the IQ. Now, on the other hand, the post-positivist for which we have the basis for qualitative researches, they say that this word is very complex and it's all open to interpretation. What one culture may consider as truth, another person, the culture may not consider it as a truth. And science can help us, to find out the solutions or find out, help us to understand the world as such. But there are many things which are beyond our understanding. So they consider it very ambiguous. And this is the world is not fixed also. And truth depends on our ability to know it, to, we can say, define the phenomena. And in contrast to the positivist, which they say the single truth is there, they believe in the we can say there are multiple realities. There is only, so it is the context is being pulled into. So everything is very context specific and context has got a meaning. So this is their assumption, that is from the positivist assumption I have put in one column and the post-positivist assumption in this. And accordingly, if the nature of the research becomes quantitative when we believe in we start with the assumptions of the positivist, and the qualitative when we believe in the assumptions which have been put forward by the post-positivism. And the other major thing which we should understand at this point is about the findings. So when we take up the quantitative researches, you must have, have some idea that we end up with the quantitative data in numbers, and our findings are also
recording in progress
in the quantitative terms. And those results, whatever we have, they are statistically significant. That is what we have. We can say that when the significance is there, basically they are beyond mere chance. That is, whatever we find, we say that it is not because of the chance, but the things actually exist. We can establish that. And the major thing is that when we take up the quantitative researches, mainly our purpose is generalizability, because they believe in the single truth, the universal truth. So whatever we find, whatever researches we conduct as quantitative researches, our purpose is that we would like to generalize the findings of our researches to the entire population, from which we have selected a smaller portion to work upon, which is known as sample. Now, in contrast to this, when we talk about the qualitative researches, we say that there are findings, but they are in the forms of, like words and certain imageries. We have not statistically significant, but there is a variable. Variability means that there is related to production of knowledge. And, so main purpose is not the generalizability or something. And idiographic it is, that is, it is very unique finding, that is to the context in which the study has been undertaken, like some cultural studies or something, where we find out deal with the qualitative nature of the researches. And however, transferable means they are not generalizable, whatever we found out in a particular context, but lessons which we learn from one study, from one culture, from one context, can be transferred to the another context. So that we have to see. So based on these things, the quantitative researches and the qualitative researches and our purpose, that is whether the purpose is mainly because when we take up the quantitative researches, we wish to generalize our findings to a larger population. And when we take up qualitative, as I said, so we can say the methods, they are different. One can mix some of the methods that we will take up later on, but mainly when we say the quantitative studies or the qualitative studies, there are certain terms which we should know. So from here, I am taking up the main methods, which are related to sampling. But these terms should be very clear in order to adopt any particular sampling, we can say, technique. The first is universe. Can anybody define universe?
We can say total population of our research.
Okay, you said the total population for a research, right?
Yes.
Then what is population?
Population is something which is related to our research. Suppose if I want to do research on employee engagement, and I have chosen the MNC sector, right? So total number of employees are universe. But if I want to do research in MNC sector only, then people working in MNC are population for me.
Okay, partially, thank you for giving this answer. Partially, you're correct. Let me clarify some of the things. Like when we talk about the universe, we say universe is, everything which exists on this planet. That is universe. It may not be of any much use to us as a researcher because, as you rightly said, we work on populations. So the universe is much larger. It consists of all the things which exist on this particular planet, and population is a small defined portion of the universe. In other words, we can say when we talk about the population in the context of research, it becomes that is it becomes a particular group of interest to the researcher, and certain elements which share the similar characteristics which are of interest to the researcher. And from the population, when we have a defined representative or other portion of the population on which we work in our research, becomes a sample. So universe, much broader, population, interest to the researcher, and then from the population, because it is not possible many a times if the population is quite large, then we may not be able to work on the entire population, that is all the elements of the population, because of the constraints of time, because of the constraints of money, and mainly these two issues. So we work on a small sample. But as I've shared you with you earlier, that when we talk about the sample, you know, then it is not that we would like to have our findings or results only for that sample. Our purpose is that we would like to have such a sample so that whatever findings are there, we would like to say something about the entire population from which we have drawn the sample. So the procedure which is adopted for drawing a sample from the population is known as sampling. So when we talk about the population uh, can be of two types. We can say the target population, it can be accessible population or the available population. So when we say the population of class, let us say class 9 students of India, and we take a small sample from the class 9 students of Delhi. So we wish that our findings may be generalized. Ideally, we would like that they may be generalized to the entire country. But when we draw a sample, generally we draw from our own states, and our findings will be generalizable to our state only if certain conditions apply. So this is the ideal population is considered as the target population, whereas the population from which we define or from which we take out a sample is known as accessible population or available population. So in the literature, you will find these two concepts of target population and available or accessible population. Related to this is the term which we use, frame or sampling frame. Both the terminologies are used. When we talk about the sampling frame or frame, it means that a list of all the elements of the population. Because unless and until a list is available to us, you cannot draw a sample randomly. It should be available to us. For example, we may have a list of all the elements in case of, let us say, if you're working on the job satisfaction of teachers of senior secondary schools of Vadodara. It is possible. We can have, it may take a long time, but we can have a list of teachers. We can have a list of male teachers. That will be a subpopulation. So it means for this particular study, the frame will be available to us. But there are certain studies, it is that the frame may not be available. You're working on, like, say, street children. You're working on certain vendors where there is no registration or something. So it is very difficult, or you want to work on drug addicts. So it is very difficult, or it is not, that particular listing of all the drug addicts is not available to us. Some might have reported to de-addiction center, but others have not. Nobody discloses. So sampling frame is basically a list of all the elements of the population from which we are going to draw a sample. But it may be available, it may not be available. So when it is available, we have different sampling methods, which we will talk about in a few minutes. And when we do not have the sampling frame, then it is not possible to have a representative sample. The word I will explain just now. The another term. Yeah.
snowball କହିବେ
प्रदीप जी, आप कुछ पूछना चाह रहे हैं?
No, madam, no.
Acha, I thought you want to ask something. Okay. Is it clear whatever we are discussing?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
भाषा में तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, हिंदी इस्तेमाल करूं ज्यादा, बता दीजिएगा.
नहीं ma'am,
No, ma'am, it's
everything
okay.
is
You can
good.
continue.
Picture, right?
Doing
Pace
great,
is
ma'am.
okay?
Yeah.
Pace
Yeah,
is
ma'am.
okay?
It is, everything is okay, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Can we tell that sample is a subset of sampling? Sampling is a subset
No,
of
no, no.
population?
Sampling is a procedure. It is a procedure for drawing a sample from the population. I'm not able to use the board, but you have for example, you have a population consisting of, let us say, 10,000 women workers or working women, and you want to draw out a sample of 1,000. Okay, so the procedure, the method which you adopt for drawing a sample from the population is known as sampling or sampling method. Procedure means certain steps. How, or in simple words, I can say, how did you draw your sample from the population? So it is simply a procedure, right?
Right.
And sample will be the product, the sample which you draw for your purpose of research. Okay, now the two things, the terminology which is very important for understanding the sampling methods is sampling bias and sampling error. Bias आप लोग सब समझते हैं, and sampling bias is basically due to the researcher. That is, the biases can be avoided. Bias can be like you are doing some research, you want to know the attitude of higher education student towards semester system. Okay, and then you say जहां पर semester system लागू हुआ है, वहां पे हम जाके, और कुछ students जो मुझे लगता है semester को like करते हैं, मुझे पता है, उन्हीं का कुछ हमने इंटरव्यू वगैरह ले लिया. So the bias is creeping. Or, I want to prove that there is some hypothesis, and you say the intelligent students, if I take in my group in my experimental study, then they may prove to be better, or my hypothesis may be proved. So I take those students, or some of the students who are known to me, I just take them. So the biases can creep in due to the researcher. But when we talk about sampling error, sampling bias also contributes to sampling error, but mainly this sampling error happens due to chance. That is, if bias occurs, that is due to the researcher. Sampling bias, as said, it contributes to sampling error also, but mainly it occurs because we work on a sample, not on the entire population. एंड आप लोग सब इस बात से एग्री करेंगे कि अगर हम किसी चीज के स्मॉल पोर्शन पर काम करते हैं और या फिर हम पूरी पॉपुलेशन पे काम करते हैं तो कुछ डिफरेंस आना आएगा. ओके, चाहे हम उसको मीन कैलकुलेट करें, चाहे मीडियन कैलकुलेट करें, तो जो स्टैटिस्टिक और पैरामीटर इज रिलेटेड टू द एंटायर पॉपुलेशन. स्टैटिस्टिक वर्ड हम यूज करते हैं व्हेन इट इज रिलेटेड टू द बेस्ड ऑन सैंपल. तो जो सैंपल और स्टैटिस्टिक और पैरामीटर में जो डिफरेंस आता है वो डिफरेंस आएगा ही बिकॉज वी आर वर्किंग ऑन ए सैंपल. सो इट लीड्स टू सैम्पलिंग एरर. और इस सैम्पलिंग एरर को मिनिमाइज करने के लिए we use certain methods. That is, we use probability sampling and we draw out a sample which is representative. So from here the story starts for quantitative researches, because when we say the sampling error or sampling bias, in sampling bias हमने researcher के point of view से avoid कर दी. मैं इसका एक example अगर आप sampling bias का लेना चाहें, for example, many a times we draw a sample and we, through Google Forms, we wish like, so we say we will collect the data. And we send our questionnaire, the Google form, to only those people who we have selected in the sample. But the return rate, as you know, is very less. And suppose 55%, 60% people return that particular questionnaire. And you say 40% ने नहीं return किया और मेरा sample जो है वो it is bias free. No, because only those who were interested or who really who volunteered to participate in your research, they sent your Google form back, but rest of the 40% remained there. So sampling bias creeped, though not intentionally, but the sample was not representative at all if we analyze our result only on the basis of the 60% questionnaires. But sampling error, I think because we have worked on a small sample, as I told you, the difference between the statistic and the parameter, because of working on a small sample instead of the entire population, so the sampling error comes in between. Now, so in order to avoid this sampling error, in order to generalize our findings to the entire population, when we draw a sample, one thing is that the sampling frame is available to us. Number two, that our sample should be adequate and representative. So let me first explain what do you mean by representative. Representative means that whatever sample we select, it should have all the characteristics of a population. That means it should be just like a its full extent. The size of the sample should also be accordingly adequate. It should be sufficient to represent the characteristics of the entire population. So when we select a sample, especially for quantitative researches, especially when we say that our results should be generalizable to the entire population from which we have drawn the sample, then we should have a sample which is adequate and representative. When we say adequate, it means there should be enough, sufficient sample size. Most of the researchers, they struggle with this problem of how to determine the adequate sample size, that is, which is sufficient so that the sampling error is reduced, and whatever findings we have within certain range, we can generalize to the entire population. Now for this, one educationist, the Kretzi and Morgan. He made our work a little easier. One can use a formula also, but that is not much in use. What we use is, on the screen, you can see that there is a table. And this table is given by Kretzi and Morgan. There are two columns, they are repeated. In the first column, you have observe this table very carefully. You have the size of the population, and in the second column is the sample size. I request all of you to please go through this table and observe the trend in terms of whether, my question will be whether the sample size is increasing with the size of the population or not. And remember the things which we have just now discussed, that if this population is small, it is better to work on the entire population rather than to take out a sample, because then there is no economic constraint, no economy of time also doesn't matter, because the population size is small. And so there is no chance for sampling error also when we are working on the entire population. So I just give you 2 minutes, just go through the columns and let us see with what trend you come out. A request to all of you. See, when the sample size is 10, what is the population size is 10, then what is the sample size? When population size is around 242, what is the sample size? When the population size is 2600, what is the sample size? Now, can you just trace some trend in this? That will be, it will be easier for you to remember for your researches, if you can just identify the trend. Anybody?
Initially, it is 100%, number of NNS 100%. Whereas at the end, you can see it is 0.00384.
Yes. And
tending to zero. Actually zero, but very less.
Very less, and it is not increasing in the same proportion. The population size is increasing a lot, but the representative, that is the adequate sample size, when we talk about the sample size, it is not increasing to that proportion, right? So good, thank you. Now just read this. These are the trends which can be seen from the table. See, for smaller populations, as you have rightly mentioned, as I have earlier also told, it is almost 100%, 1 or 2 here and there. So there is no need for drawing a sample, as I was emphasizing earlier. Then larger the size of the population, smaller is the size of the sample to get a representative sample. So we should not think that if our population is 20,000, 30,000, 1 lakh, तो हमें बहुत बड़ा sample लेना चाहिए. You can always refer to this, table of Kretzi and Morgan and have the approximate number of the sample elements. Then around 500 and 1500, 50% and 20%, देखिए और कम हो गया. और एक बार population size 5000 को cross कर गया, तो ये sample 400-500 का enough रहेगा. So this can serve, as a base for drawing out a sample of adequate size from our population, and that is why the sampling frame, मैं फिर से इसको reinforce कर रही हूँ कि sampling frame की जरूरत है. आपको sample की जो आपकी population है, जो accessible population है, जो available population है, उसका जो आपका frame है, वो आपका उसके frame से आपको पता चल जाएगा what is the size of the population. So once we have worked upon that, whether we are going for a quantitative study or qualitative study or going to mix both, that is another thing which is a recent trend. So we have decided, we have our sampling frame in hand, or whether we have it or not, that is also very clear. But if it is there, if we are believing or assuming the following the positivism, then we come to the what method we should use. So there are two types of sampling techniques which we use. One is probability and another is non-probability. These are the two broad categories. Probability sampling we generally use for the quantitative researches, and the non-probability, if we say this word is complex, the context is very important, we go for non-probability, where the purpose is not generalizability, but it is the description of the phenomena in a particular context. Like when we go for some ethnographic studies or something like this, so we go for the non-probability sampling. So when we say probability, as the name suggests, that from the population, the probability of having each and every element is known. Okay, the researcher knows the probability of inclusion of each and every element. And in the non-probability, it is not known, it cannot be specified. So there are different types of further. So these are the two broad categories as I've told you. And then let us first focus on the probability sampling. These are the different methods which we use for probability sampling. Any question till this point of time?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you. So the probability sampling, see, the first, I have mentioned it as simple random sampling. And within simple random sampling, there are three: lottery method, random number table using computer generated random numbers. And then you can read from the screen: systematic, stratified, cluster, multi-stage. These are the things. So when we go for simple random sampling, the first, when the population size is not very large, in the sense that though we have to draw a sample, but it is possible to put a lottery, lottery, all of you know, then we use simple random sampling, and the simple random sampling through lottery method. Generally, when we go through the thesis of the scholars, they say that we have used random sampling, but how they have drawn random sampling generally, it is not known to them. So either they might have used lottery method in case they have used simple random sampling, or random number table, or computer generated random numbers. So let us have the discussion on lottery method. So in the simple random sampling, the probability, jaise maine kaha ki it can be specified. So the probability of inclusion of each and every element of the population is equal and independent. It means if you have selected one particular member of the population, then it is not affecting the selection of the other. So I would like any one of you, please, to, let us say, we have to draw a sample of, I'm just saying it hypothetically. So let us say we have to draw a sample of 20 members from a population of, let us say, 100 students of class 8. Can anybody detail it out that how to use lottery method? Just steps, quickly.
So we can just put all the names and randomly of these people. I mean, we can put all the names or the class 8 students' roll numbers. Maybe put it in kind of a we can make chits, and we can put it in a bowl and pick it up, like just as a lottery. We just pick it up random, mix it up and we pick up random numbers. Maybe that's what lottery method is.
Okay, so good start. Anybody else would like to add anything to it? She has said that we have roll numbers from 1 to 1,000. Write them on the pieces of paper, okay, and put it in a bowl, and then draw 100 or the sample size. What are the precautions which we should take? Anyone?
Ma'am, we have to, first of all, what is the cheat?
Hello?
Size of the cheat should be the same.
हरेंद्र, आप बात कर रहे हैं बेटा?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
हाँ, okay.
Precaution should be the size of the cheat should be the same.
Very good. That the size of the chit should be same, so that there is no, no bias can enter into it. We cannot have any mark on any chit, or the size should be the same, so that we do not have any indication of anything. Right? Okay.
The paper should
Ma'am,
be.
can I say something? Hello.
Hello. बताए बेटे.
Yeah, ma'am, we can do one thing, like between, if the class have a 1 to 50 students are there, so 1 to 50 students have a there is a terms and condition that we going to be put in the lottery. उसी टर्म्स एंड कंडीशंस में हम सेलेक्ट करेंगे, बिकॉज कई बार क्या होता है कि लॉटरी मेथड में हम कोई भी नंबर्स डाल सकते हैं, वो भी एक चीज होता है, बट बायस ना होने के लिए लॉटरी मेथड में भी यू कैन डू द टर्म्स एंड कंडीशन लाइक 1 to 50, उसमें से पिकअप करें एंड देन नो विल गेट दिस आइडिया कि हमने किसी को रैंडमली लिया, हमने उन्हीं नंबर्स को लिया जिन नंबर्स को हमने उसमें डाला है. सो वी कैन थिंक अबाउट दिस आल्सो.
नंबर्स तो जो आपका सैम्पलिंग फ्रेम होगा ना, जैसे सपोज हमने अभी जो हाइपोथेटिकल एग्जांपल लिया है, उसमें लेटर से अगर हमारे पास 1000 भी है, तो हमें 1 to 1000 है, और उसको हम ये भी कर सकते हैं कि rather than writing big roll numbers, just code them as 2000, and accordingly we can prepare a list. So that is very clear, that is very fine. It has come from your side only. All the earlier one, the Parmar and all have said. So we have a list. So one thing is sheets बराबर होना चाहिए, ये भी बिल्कुल सही है. उसको बोल में डालना पड़ेगा या कहीं भी है, वो भी ठीक है. उसके बाद
बायस नहीं होना चाहिए.
बायस नहीं होना चाहिए. बायस तो उसमें फिर नेक्स्ट प्रोसीजर क्या होगा? सपोज वी हैव ड्रॉन 1, फिर क्या करें? एक शीट हमने निकाल के बाहर रख दिया, फिर
same sheet should not be dropped in.
We should not.
Same sheet should be not kept again in that box.
Should not be kept.
Same sheet is taken out and then it should not be again put in the same box. So
Ma'am, it's like determined and assigned करना, वैसा कि वापस उसमें नहीं डालना.
वापस नहीं डालना.
Yeah.
No, वापस डालेंगे.
क्यों मैम? But it's a lottery, ना?
Why? Let me tell you. Initially, I have told you that when we use simple random sampling, the probability is known and also it is equal. So when we take out one chit from, let us say, the 1000 chits, the probability is 1 out of 1000. We can calculate its probability. And suppose we keep it outside. The total number is 1000 minus 1. Right? So the probability of taking out the second chit is affected. And suppose we keep this also, the third one की और कम हो गई. इस तरह से जो probability है वो equal नहीं रहेगी. Therefore, in the lottery method, जो इसका rationale मैंने आपसे share किया, तो सबसे पहले जो आपने बहुत अच्छी बातें जो है इसमें share की, I'm very happy. But the last thing you should keep in mind that whatever chit we have taken out, you just note it down. The corresponding person in the list is kept in the sample. Again, the chit is put back. Again, reshuffling will be done. And जैसे हम लोग कार्ड्स खेलते हैं ना, तो जब ट्रम्प कार्ड सबके पास एक साथ आते हैं, बोले आपने शफल नहीं किया है, तो प्रोबेबिलिटी क्योंकि उसकी बढ़ जाती है कि सारा एक के पास चला जाएगा, तो यहाँ रिशफलिंग करेंगे और हमेशा प्रोबेबिलिटी को बराबर रखेंगे. अब उसमें एक चीज और आ सकती है आपके, आई एम श्योर दैट इट मस्ट बी कमिंग टू योर माइंड कि द सेम चिट कैन बी टेकन आउट अगेन. तो उसमें क्या होगा कि अगर हमें 100 लिया है और हमारे 5 चिट ऐसे रिपीट हो गए हैं, तो आप 105 लेंगे. दैट इज स्टिल योर एंटायर सैंपल इज selected. So these are the small precautions which one must take when you use lottery.
Hello, Mom.
Yes.
Hello, Mom. Mom, please can you repeat the explanation about should the same number be picked again? You are using hint, so I lost it there. Should the same number be picked again?
If the same number is repeated, because you cannot include it twice, So you will draw one more chit. Suppose your sample size is 100 and there are 5 numbers you have got 2 times. Then you will draw 5 more chits till your number is attained.
Okay.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Francis, is that okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay. So this is one. But you must be wondering, if it is 1,000, making 1,000 chits, it's a very cumbersome job. So there should be something, which must be some easier method और इसने टेक्नोलॉजी के इरा में ये सब करेंगे अगर तो it will take a long time. So there is another method which is also an old method, but still it's also very good. In this also we take out random numbers, and this is known as random number table. I have taken only a small portion of the random number table from the Best and Khan. But in your library, I'm sure in all the libraries generally of the research institutions, there is one booklet which is available. It is known as Random Number Table by Fisher and Gates. So this random number table consists of means pages and pages wherein the numbers like this are written. Are you seeing on the slide an abbreviated table of random numbers? Here I have just given the sample at a glance that of the number in rows and columns. But there are pages and pages like this, two-digit numbers, 3-digit numbers, 4-digit numbers, like that. So it's a booklet. It's a very bound booklet. One can use that also instead of the lottery method. So what we do is we take out the initial procedure remains the same. The procedure is that coding the elements of the population, that is preparing a sampling frame, coding them if you want. And then the trick in this is that what is your sample size? If it is 3-digit, we will take out 3-digit random numbers. If it is 2-digit, we will take out 2-digit numbers. Suppose your sample size is, let us say, 999. So you take out 3-digit numbers. Now the sample में जो आपको दिखाया है मैंने, it is, we have taken sample size as 700. Don't consider the lines which I have drawn, only the which we have marked as in the red font. Just focus on that. And the other numbers. Now in this table, in the random number tables, what happens that when you take the booklet in your hand after codifying the elements or preparing a sampling frame and coding the elements of that population, then what you do is you just open any page of the booklet, go to any column and start with any row. So see randomness. So the different people will draw different samples from the same population. So suppose this is the abbreviated random number table जो आपको मैं यहाँ दिखा रही हूँ, and then you can go diagonally, horizontally, vertically, whatever. So if the sample size here, the example is 700, and you have to draw a sample of like, let us say 30. So what are the different ways you can draw the numbers? One thing is because the sample size, the population size is in 3 digits. So you have to generate the numbers in 3 digits. So let us say in this we have taken 503, then 931, then 333, but 931 is more than 100, it's 700. क्योंकि वो तो हमारा पॉपुलेशन का साइज ही नहीं है 931, तो ये हट जाएगा उसमें से. So you have to strike it off. Then next number 333, next number 092. आप इसको देखिए. This way, I have given the example. This is one way. तो जो भी रेड फॉन्ट में है उनको हम कंसीडर इसलिए नहीं कर रहे हैं बिकॉज इट इज मोर देन 700 और हमारा जो पॉपुलेशन साइज है वो 700. इज इट ओके? नाउ हियर अभी हमने ऐसे मूव किया है, बट यू कैन ऑल्सो मूव like this, you can take only first 3 digits. 503, another can be 133, another can be 929, another can be 074, another can be 633. This, so you have to decide which pattern you want to adopt. जो जिसको अच्छा लगता है वो कर सकते हैं. Even you can go diagonally. 503, 319, 445, 893 और नीचे पेज चलता जाएगा. ठीक है? And the moment you finish your, suppose you want to draw a sample of 30, 30 के बाद जितना excess हो गए उनको और ले लीजिए, and this is the way you use random number table. Now, the beauty of this is that immediately your numbers are generated, and corresponding to those numbers जो आपने coding किया है, whatever list you have prepared, from that particular list, you can just select those elements into your sample. So the probability remains equal. The probability of inclusion of each element is independent of each other. So selection of one element is independent of selection of the other. This is how we use the random number table. But as I said, in this era of technology, we can also use computers. Just read the slide. I have given one website. There are a number of websites. You can use even SPSS for generating random numbers. Again, the initial steps will remain same as we have talked about in simple random sampling through lottery method. If the frame should be available, you have to code the elements of the population. जो भी अगर आप स्टूडेंट्स हैं तो आप स्टूडेंट के नाम जो स्टूडेंट हैं उनको आप एक कोड दे सकते हैं, और इसी तरह से आप जो भी आपके टीचर्स हैं, मैनेजर्स हैं, जो भी आपके सैंपल में हैं, that you can use. You can also type it in the Google, the computer generated random number tables. It will ask for certain informations like how many random numbers, what is the maximum value, what is the minimum value, would you like to allow the duplicate entries or not? So simple questions you can answer, and you will get the random numbers generated, and corresponding to those numbers, you can have the sampling elements. So your sample is ready. And this sample which you have prepared is through simple random sampling. So when we write in our thesis, in our doctoral dissertation, that you have used simple random sampling, then you can also specify which method of simple random sampling you have used. You should know it. So either you can do it through lottery method, or you can use the random number tables, that is of Fisher and Yates, or you can generate the random numbers through computer. So you can write computer generated random numbers, and accordingly you can have your sample. Adequacy you have already determined, and randomness you have determined through simple random sampling. And here, you know, the sample which you have selected is, you have ensured that there is the sampling error is reduced, though it is not possible to have a very true representative sample, कुछ ना कुछ उसमें differences आ जाते हैं. But here you can just say that you have taken all precautions. But simple random sampling जो आप बात करते हो, तो इसमें जो है अगर homogeneous population होता है, that is the different elements are of the similar type with respect to the conditions and characteristics which you have kept in the beginning, then this method serves to be a very good method. Any questions? Are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
मुझे
ma'am.
लगा कहीं डिस्कनेक्ट तो नहीं हो गई मैं. Okay. Now, the another probability sampling method is systematic random sampling. अभी हमने बात किया था simple random sampling की, ठीक है? तो simple random sampling जो है वो, जैसे मैंने कहा कि एक, जैसे सपोज आपको पॉपुलेशन जो है वो जब आपकी होमोजीनस है, जैसे मैंने कहा, तो ये बहुत अच्छी तरह से काम करती है। सिस्टमेटिक रैंडम सैम्पलिंग भी एक इजी तरीका है अगर आपके पास सैम्पलिंग फ्रेम अवेलेबल है। तो इसमें आप पढ़िए जरा, बहुत बस सिंपल सी एक चीज है जो डिफरेंट है। मेक ए लिस्ट विच इज वेरी कॉमन। दिस लिस्ट कैन बी प्रिपेयर्ड इन एनी ऑर्डर, अल्फाबेटिकल, और जो भी आप उसका बेसिस लेना चाहें, बेस्ट रहता है अल्फाबेटिकल ले। लेकिन अगर आप सीनियरिटी लिस्ट वगैरह पे काम करते हैं तो कुछ प्रॉब्लम आती है, विच आई विल टॉक अबाउट। इसमें सिंपली एक काम करना होता है कि सैम्पलिंग फ्रैक्शन आपको कैलकुलेट करना पड़ता है। कि सपोज अभी यहाँ पे जो मैंने आपके लिए एग्जांपल लिया है कि 1000 आपका पॉपुलेशन है और 100 आपको ड्रॉ करना है, तो सैम्पलिंग पॉपुलेशन आपका, सैम्पलिंग फ्रैक्शन जो है, size of the population divided by size of the desired sample. So you have, that is, every 10th number in the list you can have in your sample. Very easy to draw. But this 10th number कैसे draw कर सकते हैं? कोई बताएगा? Suppose you have a list of 1000 students. You have to draw 100. And somebody asks you, or that you go for systematic random sampling. How do
Ma'am, for this we might begin with a simple random sampling system method.
Third से शुरू
For
करते हैं?
beginning.
Can we start from? हाँ.
मैं ऐसे बोल रहा हूँ कि स्टार्टिंग में हम लोग जो सिंपल रैंडम सैम्पलिंग सिस्टम है उससे स्टार्ट करें, फिर बाद में जब हमको अपना के नंबर मिल जाए फिर वहां से हम लोग आगे बढ़ते जाए सिस्टमेटिकली।
नहीं तो सिंपल की क्या जरूरत है? फिर सिंपल, ये भी सिंपल ही है, इसमें क्या जरूरत है? शुरुआत ही यहीं से कर सकते हैं ना भाई। आपके पास लिस्ट तो है ही है, उसमें आपको, आपने सैम्पलिंग फ्रैक्शन कैलकुलेट कर लिया। मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है, आप कहाँ से शुरू करें 10th यूनिट के लिए?
Ma'am, can we use random number generator MV?
Random number generator, that is another method बेटा।
Okay ma'am.
वो तो हमने दूसरा मेथड किया ना अभी, उसमें तो सारे ही नंबर्स हम रैंडमली जनरेट करना है। इसमें पहला नंबर, परहैप्स यू वांट टू से दिस, दैट फर्स्ट नंबर कैन बी पिक्ड अप रैंडमली।
Yes ma'am.
हाँ, शायद यही कहना चाह रहे होंगे, है ना?
So we can, yes ma'am.
हाँ, तो जैसे हमने आपको, आपका जो डेट ऑफ बर्थ क्या है? ईयर मत बताइए।
Yes ma'am.
मैंने कहा ईयर मत बताइए, कोई बात नहीं। डेट क्या है?
23rd.
23rd। तो लेट अस से 2 + 3 5। आपने कहा मैं तो 5 से शुरू करना है,
जी
ठीक है? तो पहला क्या हो गया आपका? 5th। दूसरा क्या होगा?
15.
15, then 25। आपको लगता है कि नहीं, मुझे 23rd मेरी डेट ऑफ बर्थ है, मेरा लकी नंबर है, आई वांट टू स्टार्ट फ्रॉम 23rd। तो एनीथिंग यू कैन स्टार्ट फ्रॉम 23rd, then you can come to 33rd and so on, right? So every 10th unit can be taken up, right? So this is how we do the systematic random sampling. The main problem in this systematic random sampling comes, there are two things which serve as a drawback of systematic random sampling. Suppose somebody works on a seniority list. जैसे मैं आपको बताती हूँ कि हम लोग पहले in our eminent program, when we used to allocate our students, you know, for dissertation, तो research area से भी हम लोग करते थे। Initially we used to do it through merit. So merit में suppose there are 7 faculty members and we used to prepare a list, one number, कोई भी random number लेके, the senior most will get this number, then 7th will be second, 14th will be done. So it was in the order of merit. Do you see that there will be some, you know, the group of students which the first professor gets,
okay,
will be more bright or academically more performing than the group which the 7th person will get? Yes or no? Suppose we prepare the list in the order of merit.
Yes ma'am.
तो उसमें क्या होगा?
There are chances madam for that.
हाँ, चांसेस है ना। तो सिस्टमेटिक रैंडम सैम्पलिंग में अगर आप जो रैंडमली लिस्ट नहीं बनाते हो या किसी पर्टिकुलर ऑर्डर में अगर आपने लिस्ट बना दी तो एक ट्रेंड सेटिंग आ जाती है और इसमें पीरियोडिक इफेक्ट भी आ सकता है. So therefore the list has to be prepared very carefully. So this is very simple and this is the known as systematic random sampling. But many times this simple random sampling doesn't work. Neither systematic is also a type of simple random sampling. Why it doesn't work? The population is not homogeneous. For example, if we want to work on the, let us say, attitude of or the perception of university teachers about the technology integration in classroom teaching learning process, right? So we want to see that whether it should be integrated or what will be their perception. Even in the research, the technology can be integrated to a great extent. But all of you know that in the university setup, we have in the teaching faculty 3 cadres. Like we have assistant professors, we have associate professors, and we have professors. And definitely the person who is assistant professor is a new entrant, younger in age, less experience or no experience. Then associate have more, they are more experienced, right? And they have been into the system for much longer time than the assistant professors. The salaries are also better than the assistant professors. And similarly, the professors, which is the higher up, the third category. Now, if I say that when I work about ICT integration, because definitely the professors will be older in age. And as we use the two, we always say that the young ones, जैसे आप लोग अगर मैं अभी स्कॉलर हम लोग फेस टू फेस बात कर रहे होते तो और अभी मुझे कोई टेक्नोलॉजी की प्रॉब्लम आ जाएगी तो आई मे नॉट बी एबल टू सॉल्व इट विदाउट द हेल्प ऑफ समबडी बट यू पीपल आर सो टेक्नो फ्रेंडली एंड that you even for everything you rely on your mobile phone. Even you can use your mobile phones for writing notes or for giving writing notes or developing certain material out of it, whatever. So definitely one can think that they may be the perception of higher ups may be different. And the population is heterogeneous now of the university. So, and there are 3 different cadres. Now here, when we use simple random sampling, we'll have to draw a very large sample so that all cadres are reflected. But the best thing will be that we have different strata first. Strata means the meaning is layer. Okay, so we have created layers like one layer of assistant professors, another layer of associate professors. That is, the population of teaching faculty will have 3 subpopulations, 3 layers. And these 3 layers, the technical word is strata. Is that okay? So the first thing is the stratification. So this can be the stratification criteria can be the people having different cadre. The stratification criteria can be other also in the same case. But definitely experience will be commensurate with the number more or less with the cadre. For example, you're working on let us say the daily wages. So the range varies. So you can have strata according to the wages. You can have according to the age strata. You can have strata according to the gender. So any stratification criteria. So we have the strata. So we have subpopulations. And again, the same thing, which holds true for the probability sampling. All the elements of the subpopulation will be listed. And we can use any simple random sampling for deriving the sample. But the benefit is that when we divide our population into strata, subpopulations, then we will get a better representative sample. It depends upon, like we want to compare girls and boys in our study. We want to compare female teachers and male teachers. We want to compare the students of according to their age groups. So we should use stratified random sampling so that we can have a better representative sample, the people from all the strata. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it okay by everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
हरेंद्र, चले आगे बेटे? So,
हाँ मैम, yes ma'am.
So एलिमेंट्स, अब अपने जो सिंपल रैंडम सैम्पलिंग मेथड का मतलब जो यहाँ मैंने लिखा है कि कोई भी आप चाहे सिस्टमेटिक रैंडम सैम्पलिंग, चाहे लॉटरी मेथड, चाहे रैंडम नंबर टेबल, चाहे कुछ भी आप यूज कर सकते हैं यहाँ पे. लेकिन यहाँ पे और दो जो चीजें हैं वो आप यहाँ पे ध्यान रख सकते हैं. पहला कि और भी इसको रिप्रेजेंटेटिव बना सकते हैं. दो तरीके से हम स्ट्रेटा में, एक तो हमारा अभी जो सामने आपका एग्जाम्पल है, ये बाद में थोड़ा इक्वल एलोकेशन पे अगर हम बात करें तो आप ये देखिए कि आपकी पॉपुलेशन में 409 क्लास स्टूडेंट्स थे. आपको जो अपने रिसर्च के लिए काम करना था, यू वांटेड टू डू योर रिसर्च एंड द पीपल यू वांटेड टू इंक्लूड इन योर रिसर्च वर बेस्ड ऑन द IQ. So when we classified our population, so this was 255 average, 75 high IQ and 70 low IQ. Then you selected, because we wanted a sample of, let us say, 180 students. So you randomly selected from each strata 60, 60, 60 students. And then further you can do for experimental, whatever you did, method A, method B, that is immaterial at this point of time. So what you have done is equal number of elements you have taken from all the strata, irrespective of the number of people in that strata. Even when it was 75, you took 60. Even when it was 255, you took out 60. Even when it was 70, you took out 60. So all the strata had equal representation in your sample. This is known as equal allocation. Okay? But इससे भी better तरीका होता है कि हम अपने, because if you remember what we discussed initially, that sample जो होता है, it should be a just like Bini population. It should have all the characteristics of the population. So equal में भी आएगा. We can ensure that we have people from different strata. लेकिन अगर हम इसी proportion में उनको रखें sample में, so that will be better. Now here I have tried to give you an example. A population consisting of 3 strata, 1, 2, and 3. It can be according to, as I've told you, any criteria can be there for preparation of strata depending upon the study. जो मैंने आपको examples दिए, चाहे वो age, gender, even demography के हिसाब से भी, rural, urban, rural, आपने 3 strata बना सकते हो. तो depending upon what is the objective of your study. And that means if there is a population, again I repeat, if the population is heterogeneous, then always do not go for simple random sampling. It is always better to go for stratified random sampling. Better. It is not incorrect to have simple random sampling. तब आपको sample बड़ा लेना पड़ेगा to ensure that people from all the strata are there in your sample. But if you go for stratified random sampling, it is already ensured that you have elements from all the strata. So आपने इतनी देर में ये सब देख लिया होगा कि first strata का size 2000 है, because you have subpopulations frame also. And then divide 4000 by 200, the desired sample जो आपने Kretzi, Morgan वहां से निकाल लिया, what is the adequate size. And then we have the sample size. So आपने देख लिया कि 200, 4000, that means you have determined that what percentage of your strata should be your sample size. And similarly, what you can do is you can draw the proportionate sample size from each strata. Now, this sample size जो है यहाँ पे आप देखेंगे, it is So this is how the equal allocation is done. Oh, sorry, proportional allocation is done. Is it right? If you have understood, you will be able to identify the thing here. Example में मैंने कुछ intentionally यहाँ पर गलत लिखा है. Just try to find it out. If you have understood it, you will be able to find it. Anyone? Is it okay? Just focus.
Sorry, proportional. Proportional allocation is not there.
Yes. The population size has got a typographical error. Suppose it is 1000 and we want to draw out a sample of. So you are drawing how much? 2000 का 100 क्या percent है?
20%.
20.
No,
20. 1500 का?
Divided by
How
20.
much percent? That means 5%. It's 5%.
Decide करो. हाँ, शाबाश.
Strategize by 20.
20% है.
If we divide the strata size by 20, we get the sample size. 2000 divided by 20 is 100, 1500 divided by 20 is 75, 500 divided by 20 is 25.
And what about population size and sample size? How did you come to this figure? Just trying to wake you up.
Ma'am, it is 5%. Compared to the strata, the sample drawn is 5%.
Yes. And according to the NN sample size, is it 5%?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So why are you confused? If I say something, so it's okay. See, this is, how now I can guess that you have understood what is proportional allocation. So this is the strategy I have used for stimulus variation. मुझे लगा कि बहुत क्योंकि we cannot interact face to face, so the people might not have slept. Is it clear now? So we have equal and the proportional allocation. This is another type of sampling which is known as stratified random sampling. I have side by side discussed, Now there is another type of thing. Here we are presuming in both simple random sampling and stratified random sampling that we have a sampling frame and it is available to us. But sometimes, the frame is available. It can be made available, but it is very difficult to list down all the elements of the population. For example, you want to interview certain, let us say, the principals of senior secondary schools for knowing their decision-making style. Let us enter into the arena of educational management. Now you want to, just go for Vadodara state, let us say. Or you want to say that, okay, I want to, and there must be so many districts. I don't know the number of districts in Vadodara, but definitely more than one. So we have a number of districts. Now, it is very difficult, or I want to do something on, let us say, principals or teachers also you can take, let us say teachers. So it is very difficult to prepare a list of all the teachers of all the senior secondary schools in the single state Vadodara. But definitely, it can be made available. I'm not saying the sampling frame is not available, because agar available nahi hoga, we cannot use probability sampling. So here the sampling frame can be made available, but if we use the list of schools in the sampling frame, that is the sampling unit, agar hum sampling the school kar le, so it will be easier because you have list of schools on the website and of a particular directorate of education and all. So in such type of cases, in order to make our work easier, though simple random sampling, the stratified random sampling is always good, But here we can also do the random sampling, that is the probability sampling. How? We can just have the districts. You can just randomly select, let us say 2-3 districts, and you must be knowing the average number of schools in a particular district and average number of teachers in a school. So वहां पे accordingly you will decide the number of schools you select randomly, and in those schools, whatever may be the number of teachers, on an average, let us say there will be 50 teachers in senior secondary schools. So you decide that I will take all those teachers in the selected school as a cluster. Cluster means jhund, a group. So you're picking up the entire cluster. So the 3 steps which I have written, that division of population into clusters. And then population units जो है, list of population units की जो आप select करना चाह रहे हैं, teachers, it may not be available. It can be prepared, but it may not be available very easily. And many a times it is very geographically scattered also. So then you can use for cluster sampling. Very easy. You are using random method, but here you are picking up a cluster, and within the cluster, whatever you are sampling element is there, not the unit. Unit तो आप select कर रहे हैं as a school cluster, और उसमें जितने भी teachers हैं उसको आप sample में ले सकते हैं. So this is known as cluster. इसके साथ साथ when you go through the literature, in many of the books you may find the cluster sampling and multi-stage random sampling is considered to be the same. But I will say that there is a difference. Now, this is also a random sampling, and here we talk about multi-stage random sampling. That is, अभी आप slide पर देखिए, and when we want to make large-scale surveys, for example, we conducted a study on diets, nationwide. So when I personally took Uttar Pradesh and Delhi. So in Uttar Pradesh, there were more than 100 diets, and in Delhi, there were 9 diets. So you cannot approach all the teachers because it was a big study. So and it was to be covered nationwide. There were different task forces. So how did we decide the sample? So first, the entire country into different regions. Then randomly, we selected certain states. Then randomly, certain districts. Then of the districts, we selected blocks, again randomly. Then again, you can go for, suppose हम लोगों ने तो districts लिया क्योंकि diets जो थे वो district में थे, so we stopped there only. And then took all the teachers and the students, again we selected randomly within the selected diets. But suppose you want to do with the teachers, let us say you want to study the job satisfaction of teachers in India, right? So what you do in India means different regions, east, west, north, south, central. Then you can go for different states in those regions, pick up randomly. From the state, pick up the districts, pick up the blocks. Usme high schools, pick up the randomly. And within the high schools, you can pick up the teachers randomly. So at every stage, that is, you picked up the sample at various stages. And within this, you can also use any type of random sampling. You can go for stratified, and suppose you reached the teachers. And then you say, I want to study, no, teachers में तो experience के हिसाब से अलग अलग होता है. So I want that we should select the teachers according to the strata. So when you reach the teachers, use random sampling, stratified random sampling. So depending upon the nature of your problem, you can use multi-stage random sampling. Here in the cluster sample, you will pick up the cluster. And here within the stages, you can use any type of random sampling method. But you're picking up at different stages. You're working on the population in at different stages to pick up your sample. I'm not explaining the size here because that I've already explained. So this is how we take out in the quantitative researches, basically where our aim is generalizability to the population, we try to ensure to reduce the sampling error by making a sample representative. And this sample becomes representative mainly by using probability sampling and any method of random sampling according to its suitability you can use. यहाँ कुछ कोशिश की है, देखिए अगर आपको समझ आता है, ये आपके पॉपुलेशन एलिमेंट्स हैं और ये ब्लैक ब्लैक डॉट्स आपके कोई भी पिकअप हो गया रैंडम में। अब जब आप सिस्टमेटिक पे जाएंगे तो देखिए एवरी फिफ्थ एलिमेंट इज बीइंग पिक्ड अप। इफ यू गो सिस्टमेटिकली, स्ट्रेटिफाइड में हर स्ट्रेटा में से आपने देखा अगर 3 स्ट्रेटा हैं तो आपने प्रोपोर्शनेटली 3 लिए, और 4 आपने देखा 2 स्ट्रेटा में हमने डिवाइड किया है, तो यहाँ पे हमने प्रोपोर्शनल लिया है। अगर 15 हैं तो 3 लिए हैं, 20 हैं तो we have taken 4. This is your cluster sampling where you have taken the entire cluster. देखिए पूरा झुंड आपने, group of people sharing the similar characteristics you have taken. And here in this slide, this is from LR Gay. You can just go through it. Process I have explained, advantages I have explained. However, there may be disadvantages which we have already discussed side by side. So with this, I complete the probability sampling, which is taken up in the quantitative researches when we have, or when we start with the belief of the positivist. That is, the research is based on the positivist paradigm. Shall I move ahead? Time is running fast.
Yes,
Any
ma'am.
questions?
No, ma'am.
Now come to the non-probability sampling.
Ma'am, so stratified and multi-stage level sampling is a part of stratified, we can say that.
See, multi-stage is only large number of stages. अभी आप कोई लिटरेचर देखेंगे तो क्लस्टर और मल्टी स्टेज को भी उन्होंने एक साथ डील किया हुआ है। क्लस्टर ऑब्लिक मल्टी स्टेज है, लेकिन दोनों में डिफरेंस ये है कि क्लस्टर में, जैसे वो मैंने आपको बता दिया, आप कह रहे हैं स्ट्रेटिफाइड और मल्टी स्टेज। स्ट्रेटा जो है वो बराबर हैं आपके, जैसे मैंने आपको एक दिखाया भी था पीछे। सी, ये मल्टीपल स्टेजेस नहीं है, These are not stages. आपकी जो पॉपुलेशन 400 की थी, आपने उसको 3 सब पॉपुलेशन में बांट दिया और वहां पर आपने रैंडमली सिलेक्ट कर दिया, यानी कि आईक्यू के हिसाब से आपने 3 स्ट्रेटा बनाए। ठीक है, जो मल्टी स्टेज रैंडम सैम्पलिंग है, मतलब ये थोड़ा सा ब्रॉडर आपका कॉन्सेप्ट है, जहां पे अब जैसे सपोज हम कहते हैं कि यहाँ पर पॉपुलेशन ये है 75 आईक्यू के स्टूडेंट्स हैं, आपने उसमें से उस पर आपने स्ट्रेटिफाइड सैम्पलिंग, आपने क्लस्टर सॉरी मल्टी स्टेज रैंडम सैम्पलिंग में से फिर आईक्यू स्टूडेंट्स में अलग अलग आईक्यू के लोग ले लिए, उनको स्ट्रेटिफाइड फर्दर स्ट्रेटा में बताया, फिर उनको स्ट्रेटा में मेल फीमेल सिलेक्ट कर लिए, तो ये मल्टी स्टेज हो जाता है। इज इट ओके?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I'm working on the research where I have taken up the district case study. So I applied multi-stage and strata both parallelly.
That I told you, no?
Yes.
Within the
Yes,
multi-stage,
yes.
you can use
I can go. Yes.
That I told you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
हाँ, within the multi-stage sampling, you can use any random sampling method. उसको आप इंटीग्रेट कर सकते हो, जबकि क्लस्टर के साथ आप नहीं कर सकते। अगर आप बारीकी से दोनों के डिफरेंस को देखें ना, कई बुक्स में आपको ऑब्लिक करके भी मिल जाता है, लेकिन वहां पे आप रैंडम जो है क्लस्टर उठा रहे हैं। इसमें फर्दर यू कैन यूज एनी मेथड्स, कोई भी। आप सिंपल रैंडम सैम्पलिंग भी कर सकते हैं, आप सिस्टमैटिक भी कर सकते हैं, आप स्ट्रेटिफाइड भी यूज कर सकते हैं। सो यू आर करेक्ट इन योर सैम्पलिंग प्रोसीजर, राइट? Is it okay, beta?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay. So,
ma'am, there is a question.
Yeah, please.
Ma'am, what is multi-phase sampling?
multi-phase is different phases, you know, अलग अलग उसमें मल्टी स्टेज मल्टी फेज आप उसमें थोड़ा सा डिस्टिंक्शन आप कर सकते हैं. ये इट्स ऑल टर्मिनोलॉजी, यू नो. मल्टी फेजेस में मतलब डिफरेंट फेजेस में आप कर रहे हैं, सो इट इज मोर और लेस द सेम. However, you can also distinguish in the sense, suppose you have administered you want to administer a questionnaire and also an interview schedule. Okay, so when you administer the questionnaire, as all of you know, that the questionnaire can be administered to a large number of people in one go, because it doesn't have to be every time, you know, you don't have to administer it in person. आपने Google form हजारों को दे दिया, then that is one. Then you analyzed your questionnaires और questionnaire के responses के हिसाब से now you want to go in depth. You want to understand, let us say आपने स्टडी की जॉब सेटिस्फेक्शन पे टीचर्स के, आपने 1000 टीचर्स को कर दिया, उसके बाद आपने उसको एनालाइज किया, एंड यू वांट टू स्टडी नाउ द रीजंस फॉर लो जॉब सेटिस्फेक्शन. So you picked up the people from those teachers who had low job satisfaction based upon their questionnaire. आपने उसमें से जो लो जॉब सेटिस्फेक्शन वाले लोग थे, उसमें से आपने 25% लोगों को ले लिया फॉर इंटरव्यू. सो फर्स्ट फेज वाज select the administration of questionnaire, and the second phase was for the purpose of interview. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So we were talking about non-probability. This is very simple. Non-probability इसमें जो है, जैसे मैंने बोला, क्वालिटेटिव स्टडीज में हम जनरली यूज करते हैं, लेकिन नॉन प्रोबेबिलिटी सैम्पलिंग हम लोग एक्सप्लोरेटरी स्टडीज में भी करते हैं. व्हेन यू आर सिंपली एक्सप्लोरिंग द फील्ड, व्हाट इज हैपनिंग, यू नो, यू जस्ट वांट टू हैव अ फील ऑफ इट एंड देन यू वांट टू डिजाइन योर स्टडी. इवन फ्रॉम क्वांटिटेटिव टू क्वालिटेटिव भी जा सकते हैं. क्वालिटेटिव में भी कई बार हम क्वांटिफाई करने की कोशिश करते हैं. तो नॉन डिपेंडिंग अपॉन योर नेचर ऑफ स्टडी यू कैन गो फॉर, लेकिन दिस नॉन प्रोबेबिलिटी होल्ड्स गुड फॉर क्वालिटेटिव टेक्निक्स, क्योंकि यहाँ पे देयर वोंट बी एनी जनरलाइजेबिलिटी, क्योंकि यहाँ पे आपका सैंपल रिप्रेजेंटेटिव नहीं होता. सो व्हाट आर दोज? बहुत सारे हैं इसमें. आई हैव टेकन 4. कन्वीनियंस सैम्पलिंग, एज द नेम सजेस्ट, that whoever comes to you, whoever is available, you administer your tools on that particular sample elements, and you say, I want to, you know, just administer it on 30 people, 40 people, and whoever is available, then you do your sampling. यहाँ इसमें कुछ हो सकता है, एजुकेशन के स्टूडेंट्स भी हैं, and even in the other, when you do it at the PG level, many times it becomes very difficult to seek the permission of the administrators. You know, they don't allow you to enter the institution, the school or college.
वो तो लग गया, गिर ना जाए, मेरे को डर लगता है. अच्छा गिर ले.
हेलो संगीता, का कुछ क्वेश्चन है संगीता?
Maybe by mistake she did.
Okay, so what happens that whichever, then some of the principals they give you permission, or the managers give you permission depending upon your field of study. So you just start taking the responses from those people who are easily available or from whom you have sought the permission, rather than going for simple random sampling. So this is known as convenience sampling. That is, whoever is available, it may be convenient to you. You want to make an exploratory study and you say you want to have a feel of the field also. So you are going for non-probability, and within the non-probability, आप बोलते हैं ये स्कूल मेरे घर के पास है और मुझे पीजी लेवल की स्टडी में परमिशन भी नहीं मिल रहा है, so you go for that. लेकिन यहाँ पे non-probability sampling में again I emphasize, it is not possible to generalize your findings to your population because you are not having a representative sample. Okay, now here I have tried to show the convenience sampling, irrespective of कौन सा है, आपने कोई भी 7 आपको लेना है, आपने ले लिया. Now let us go for another type of sampling which is known as snowball sampling. Now this snowball, yes.
Why we are using convenience sampling? Maybe all the characteristics are same, something like that. Yeah, the ages, the level of education, the interests. Why? What's the reason? What's the main reason that we are using convenience sampling, or it's not such?
Basically, जो convenience sampling है, number one is that here the probability of inclusion of a sampling element cannot be specified, because in the non-probability sampling, the sampling frame is not available. See, don't pick up anything in between. Just that is why I have tried to build the premise. You have to see the premise from the positivist perspective and non-positivist perspective, number one. Then you have to see whether the probability of inclusion of whether the sampling frame is available or not available. That is, they can be prepared or cannot be prepared. You don't know. Okay. When you don't have the sampling frame, how can you know the characteristics of the population?
True.
Right? So when you don't know the characteristics of the population, how do you know that you have in your sample all the characteristics?
Correct.
And here we are not making any efforts also to include all those characteristics in the sample. Right?
Right,
so it is a type of non-probability sampling, and therefore, yeah. Now, when we are talking about, is it okay?
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Fahad. Okay. Then we can talk about the snowball sampling. Pehle samajh lijiye. Now, many times it is not possible to reach or to know the type of sample, the elements on which we want to work. For example, drug addicts, right? Or we can say the street children, or let us say if the students of education, they want to do something related to the teachers who have got 2 years of B.Ed or 1 year of B.Ed earlier. They want to compare. So it's very difficult, to go to the field and have a random sampling or something like that. So what we do is we can start our chain. All of you must have been to a hill station. तो वहां पे बर्फ आइस का बॉल बना के फेंकते हैं ना, and it spreads in different directions. The same thing applies here, and that is why the name snowball sampling. So you contacted one person or two persons who fulfill your criteria. If your criteria is that who have done 1 year B.Ed and they are teaching, let us say in government schools of Vadodara or Delhi, whatever your population is, and then one person and then you ask that person, do you know any other person who has the same, who fulfills the same criteria? She or he may tell you 2 persons. So they are also included in the sample. Then you ask those 2 persons, do they know some person like this? Because they are of the same profile. So they will keep telling you and you will keep collecting data from them. This is known as snowball sampling. So dekhiye, yahan pe there is one circle. You 1, 2, then this person did not tell anything, but this person told about shared 2 profiles, and then like this. So this is known as snowball sampling. Now, the problem here is that the people who share the same features, they are the friends. So they remain in long contact with each other. So what happens? I will be telling you the persons who are of the same, aptitude and attitude like me, who have the similar type of nature. So what happens? You may not have the very good feel of the field. So what you do is you start 3-4 chains simultaneously, so that you may have the vast representation of the responses in respect of your variable. So this is known as snowball sampling. And then there is another quota sampling. This is also very, you will find maybe some question you may ask, I'll be happy to answer. In the quota sampling, what happens? That that you let us say, take it through an example. You went to a college, you wanted to study the attitude of the college students of a particular institution, let us say Baroda. आप अपना वडोदरा यूनिवर्सिटी का ले लीजिए. And you say in the graduation, I want to specify or confine myself to graduate students. Then you find out that in graduation courses, so many females are there and so many males are there. And they form 60% males or 40% females. So what you say that my sample, I want to say 100 students. So I will take 60 female, because in the Vadodara University there are 60% male females and 40% males. So 60 females I will take and 40 females I will take, males, whatever it is. So what you do is you start collecting your data, whoever comes to you or whoever meets you in the library or in the canteen, and you keep counting the numbers and taking the responses on your questionnaire or interview or whatever you have decided as a tool. So once the 60 females are done, you stop there. It may be possible that your 100 number is not achieved, but because you have decided quota in advance that 60 females I will take in accordance with the number in the entire Vadodara University. So you stop there, and side by side, you must be collecting from the males also. So once it is 40, you stop data collection. So this is how the quota sampling is done. You started believing that this is a quota completed, right? So this is how, and there may be, the criterion sampling. बहुत सारे नाम जो है non-probability sampling में होते हैं. But one thing is very important. We use many a times, we collect qualitative data even through interviews, and there we may not decide about the sample in advance, that what will be the number. What we do then? There is a concept known as saturation in qualitative studies. Now, what happens in that is that suppose you start interviewing about the factors which are responsible for, let us take factors responsible for dropouts, and you are, taking the reasons from the teachers. Now, you interviewed one teacher, and then you came out with certain reasons. She or he gave certain reasons. Then you interviewed another person. And the beauty of qualitative research is that the data collection and data analysis goes side by side, more or less. So second teacher you interviewed, third teacher you interviewed, and you found that new categories are emerging. They are giving reasons are being added. But when you reached the 10th person, you found that whatever reasons she or he gave, they're similar to what has been covered by the earlier 9 respondents. Okay, you noticed this thing, then you went to the 11th person. Again, the same thing, no new category was added. And then you went to the 12th. So you took 2-3 extra, and you found that no new categories or no new reasons they were emerging from the teachers about the dropout of the children from the schools. So this is the stage of saturation. Science people will understand when there is a saturation, supersaturation, then crystallization takes place. So यहाँ पे जो crystallization है, in the form of that कोई नई category नहीं आ रही, so we won't add or we won't interview the 14th candidate because data saturation has been achieved. So this is how we go about in the qualitative researches. So when the data saturation is achieved, then we stop here. There is no need, as in the quantitative researches, for predetermination of the number of sample elements. This is about, we can say about the probability sampling and non-probability sampling in respect of qualitative and quantitative researches. Now, if there is any question, you are most welcome. Anything else
Can I ask,
people want to
can
know?
I ask you a question? And Harendra, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
And in quota sampling, as you said that like we decide that first 10 or first 20 sample we are going to collect, and then we stop the sampling.
Sorry, I'm not able to hear.
I mean, is it audible?
Yeah. In quota
I mean,
sampling.
quotas. Yes, in quota sampling, like as you said that we come with the first 10 or 20 in mind that we are going to collect the data and then stop the sampling as our quota is getting over. Okay, but let's say like if I enter into MS University and I have if I decide in my mind that there are only 10, I am going to take the 10 sample of the teachers, and if I reach to the education department and I got all the 10 responses, or all 10 teachers, then what is the chance that I am not getting the representative of entire population? Because the perception of the the teacher in education may be different from the commerce background or arts background or science background.
Right.
So in that case, like how to minimize this error?
See, one thing is you should be very clear that quota sampling is a non-probability sampling. Okay. Number one. Another thing, when you are using quota sampling, you should be very clear that your findings will not be generalizable. Number two. Number three, yes, there is a possibility that we can reduce it in the sense that you can ensure that different departments, then you may not use quota sampling as such. See, the sampling method which we decide is based on the nature of the research problem we have, and then we decide which type of sampling technique will be suitable, right? So from the paradigm, we'll come to quantitative or qualitative, and within the quantitative and qualitative, with which objective, which research question we have in mind. I think you will cover that portion also. What are the research questions? And then you decide about the sampling strategy. Now here, when you say that I want to cover the different departments, and you know that the people in the teachers in the education department about some particular issue may have a different perception because of their background about a particular, in a particular field, and the commerce people will have different than the psychology. That is, it is a discipline specific perception may change, that is in your mind before you are starting a research. You have this assumption. So therefore, what will you do is that don't go for quota sampling as such, right? Now here you may go for that I will be taking 5 teachers from each department. And then you go to department on the basis of convenience. You take the sample from the responses from the 5 teachers. And here within the quota also you can decide this. Within the quota means you want to collect it from 30, but here you will have to specify. This will not be quota. Quota means that you have decided that you will be taking the responses of 30 teachers. Right. So basically it will be your the subdivision of in terms of the departments, and then you decided that I will be having the representation of each department, and I will be taking 50% of the teachers in each department. That also you can decide, isn't it? And even in the, I have not dealt with the qualitative, the non-probability sampling. There is also one criterion sampling, there is one homogeneous sampling. There is one, the purposive random sampling. बहुत सारे sampling के तरीके होते हैं, those you can adopt. But here I have answered your question that if your study is like that, then you can go for each and every department and you say that I am going to collect data from the 50% of the faculty from each department. So that is your quota or the convenience basis.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
And there is one more question. Ma'am, I've seen some people going for convenient sampling and they later on label it as they did purposefully. So is there any way to differentiate as an editor or
see the purposive sample is that basically in some of the cases that it is based on the experience or judgment of the researcher. It is the prior experience of the researcher and the judgment about the characteristics of the population. And then you say that this criteria will be fulfilled by this group of responses, and therefore you have taken those people in your researches. That is the judgmental, we can say, the type of sampling or the purposive type of sampling. Now, so when we say convenience, that is once you have decided on the basis of certain criteria and the researcher has, for example, you can say that the researcher, uh, in the case of judgmental sampling, you are doing some research on student unrest, let us say. I'm trying to just explain it. I don't know what is your study all about. So who will give the responses about the student unrest? Their teachers, their managers, their, the registrar, or who can give us the more cases? So the researcher has a judgment that these people will be the best persons because they have dealt with, like Proctor, so you can have those people also in your sample in the non-probability sampling. And then you go, let us say you have 10 such people, and in-depth study you want to take of 5. So among those 10, you can use convenience sampling for 5. Right? Or even you can have purposive random. Some of the books say that you should not combine the probability and non-probability, but in some of the books it is also highlighted that you can use purposive random sampling also. तो 10 में से आपने 5 randomly कर लिए, 10 में से आपने 5 convenience से उठा लिए, but initially जो आपका group था उसको आपने judgmental basis पे या purposive basis पे उठाया है. So that is the answer. I hope I am able to clarify.
Yes, thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
If you are not satisfied, please ask again. This is what I understood.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening.
Satish?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I wanted to ask you one question. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, Satish, please.
So, ma'am, I have heard that at PhD level, it is better to have probability sampling. So, is there anything like that you have to use probability sampling over non-probability
No.
sampling?
See, beta, it depends upon the type of study you have. If you are going for a quantitative research, so at PhD level, it will be better. You may have to make contribution to the existing knowledge also, no? It is not, just practicing research methodology, which is done at the PG level. It is basically contributing to the already existing some new relationship, some new pattern, something like that. So if you're taking qualitative research, no scope for probability sampling. If you're taking quantitative research, then it will be better to go for probability.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
क्योंकि आपका पर्पस जो है जनरलाइजेशन तक जाना चाहिए. And if you want to explore any phenomena in depth, then go for qualitative. If you have a quantitative plus qualitative method you are using, approach that you are using, like I have said that you have established something and then you want to explore something in depth. आपने कुछ इंटरव्यू के लिए लोगों को सिलेक्ट कर लिया, वहां पर आप यूज कर सकते हैं नॉन प्रोबेबिलिटी. लेकिन मेनली अगर आपका क्वांटिटेटिव स्टडी ही है, जहां पर आप क्वांटिटेटिव स्टडीज में किस तरह की स्टडीज हैं, आपके पास डिस्क्रिप्टिव स्टडीज हैं, कोरिलेशनल, प्रेडिक्शन जिसमें आप करते हैं, रिग्रेशन प्रेडिक्शन लगाते हैं, एक्सपेरिमेंटल है, एक्सपोस्ट फैक्टो है, तो वहां पे हमें प्रोबेबिलिटी में जाना चाहिए, स्पेशली सर्वे और ये सब कोरिलेशनल स्टडीज के अंदर. यस, एनी अदर क्वेश्चन?
Hello.
Good
evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, can someone use probability and non-probability method together? For example, if I want to study in the Baroda district, okay, and I want to collect the data from each area of Baroda, so would be considered as a strata?
From each area of
Baroda district.
Okay.
For example, Gotri, Manjalpur.
That I told you ना, बड़ौदा जो है वो स्टेट है, राइट?
Yes.
स्टेट में आपके डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स हैं.
Okay.
अब स्टेट में से आप पूरा स्टेट में कितने डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स हैं? That you will have to tell me.
Ma'am, Baroda is a district. It is a city.
Gujarat is a state. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Gujarat. Baroda is a district. Now, within this,
yes, Baroda is a
I'm so
district.
गुजरात is a state and बड़ौदा is a district. Now वडोदरा में आपका जो है आप सैंपल आपके सैंपल एलिमेंट क्या है?
Sample elements means characteristics you're asking?
Pardon?
Hello. Hello, that I want to collect data from the people who are poor.
Who are?
Poor. Those
poor.
who are
Okay.
vulnerable.
Okay. That is below poverty line?
Not exact poverty line, but for those, I can say, for those, the government has made schemes, different schemes available.
The voice is breaking, beta. Sujata ji, voice cut rahi.
No, Anita ji, I have to intervene here. Your sector is fantastic and so thought-provoking that all of them are asking you a lot of questions on their research. Our next resource person has come already, has joined us in waiting. So, Manisha, you can email it to her probably with your question, Manisha, and the rest of you. And probably on the email, she can answer you. It was really a wonderful session.